did remind me of Percy Jackson. Thorough, in-depth explanations about how she would like to commit some sort of violent act towards him. I'm really surprised she didn't get put on like a watch list. Crazy ending. The emotional roller coaster that I was on. Hi. So, I know in my last video, and I think also the one before that, I said that we'd be back to regularly scheduled programming. Obviously that did not happen. Had some more things come up. It's just been very busy, had health stuff again, and like currently, oh, also, starting this video off great, we're in a different location, different corner of my room I guess, because we are getting the floors done next week, so half of my room is not here anymore, namely my bookshelf. Everything, all the books are packed away in boxes and my bookshelf is out of my room, and there's a big mess on the floor full of my clothes that I have to pack away. Stuff is going on, but hence the change of scenery. We've got that going on, and I also ran into some computer troubles. My editing software that I used, I can no longer use, and my computer has been dying for like a year, so I got a new one. Yay. But yeah, I've just not been able to film until now. I'm not going to promise that we're going to be back to regularly scheduled programming because, let's be honest, clearly that's just not been happening the past couple months. Fingers crossed I can film a little more. I will be filming a sunrise on the reaping reading vlog because that comes out in 7 days, literally a week, until I can. I don't think I'm emotionally ready. I don't think I'm emotionally prepared for that, but it's fine. So I will be filming that. Today, however, let me introduce you to the actual video today. I'm going to be filming my January and February reading wrap up. So sorry for the chaos that was that intro. We're just gonna get right into it. Okay, so the first book I finished reading in January this year was Tress of the Emerald Sea by Sanderson. I actually was reading this over like two and a half months. It was our book club book for I think November. I don't even remember honestly, but again, things have been happening, so I did not finish it until January. Tress of the Emerald Sea is about our main character Tress, who, I mean, Sanderson has described this book as the Princess Bride, if I think it's Buttercup was the main character. I haven't read or watched The Princess Bride. I know that's criminal. I cannot say how true that is, but Sanderson has described Tress in that way. Anyway, essentially Tress, our main character, has grown up on this one island her entire life. She's never ever left the island, and her friend Charlie gets sort of taken away and some things happen, so Tress has to set out on a journey, stow away on a pirate ship and go on an adventure to essentially like make a bargain with a sorceress who's like evil, bad, no one makes it out of there alive. So essentially we're following Tress leaving her island for the first time and like having her eyes like opened up to the rest of the world. But in Tress's world there are Spore Ocean. I'm forgetting the intricacies of each individual ocean because there's different coloured ones that do different things, but specifically in the like green, the Emerald Spore Ocean, when water drops on them it like creates these massive vines that if you're sailing on a boat on a pirate ship, it like destroys the ship because it will like wrap around it and like crush it and everything. So treacherous seas, but this was a really fun book. I haven't rated this on Goodreads yet, but I think I give it 4 stars. I really did enjoy it, even though it took me a while to get through. Sanderson, what can I say? I love every single book of his that I've read so far. The humor in this book is really good. I feel like if you're craving like a more adult, this is young adult, but a little bit more of a grown-up tone of book as Percy Jackson. The narrator of the book is a character in the book, but it's not Tress. This is hard to explain without spoiling it, but the narrator is not Tress, and they sort of have a lot more knowledge of like what's going on than Tress does, and they're a little bit snarky and a little bit sarcastic, and they talk to us as the reader, and it just makes it feel like a really fun experience. I really enjoyed the narrator and like that whole tone of voice, and it did remind me of Percy Jackson, so that was really fun. I also feel like this is really niche, but I just recently rewatched all the Tinkerbell movies, and I feel like if you were a fan of Tinkerbell and the Pirate Fairy, how she makes like all the different fairy dust and that sort of thing, vaguely similar to the Spore Seas and like the different things that they do. So I feel like if you like the Pirate Fairy vibe, Tress of the Emerald Sea is potentially a good book rec for you. But yeah, the world was very unique and fun. It's on a pirate ship, which I love. I'm always down for a pirate ship adventure. The only thing I could say is that I needed a little bit more found family vibe between the characters on the ship, because I mean, it's Brandon Sanderson, so like all the characters were quite individual and well-rounded, but I feel like we just didn't get really strong connections between at least Tress and the other main characters. Like, it was here and there, but it wasn't as strong of a found family feeling as I typically like, especially when they're like stuck on a pirate ship. That's just one thing that me personally I like a little bit more of, so yeah. But Tress of the Emerald Sea, I really did enjoy it, and it was a really, really good book to start off the year. As soon as I finished this book as like my first book of the year, I was like, this is gonna be a great reading year. And then the next book I read also solidified that idea that this is going to be a really good reading year. That book being I Hope This Doesn't Find You by Anne Lang. If you watched my top 5 books of 2024 video, I did mention Anne Lang in that video and I raved about her, because when I filmed that video I literally just finished reading I Hope This Doesn't Find You. Reading this book like absolutely solidified Anne Lang as one of my favourite romance authors. I just like, every single time I read one of her books, they're all young adult, the ones that I've read so far, and they are so like feel good, fluffy, just sweet romances. She just writes like such good banter between characters. Like, a lot of her romances have started off as like academic rivals, or they're just not super big fans of one another, and it's just like the build up from them sort of being like, I could do with you out of my life, to being like head over heels in love with each other. It's just like so good and so sweet, and they're just like such feel good books. I can't stress that enough. I'm getting way ahead of myself. I need to explain the book to you. So we have our main character Sadie. She is school captain, valedictorian. Everyone like goes to her for help. She is like the golden student, the definition of a golden student. She also is like a huge people pleaser to the point where it's like detrimental to her mental state. And in order to deal with this, she writes very visceral hate emails to anyone who like slightly annoys her or disrespects her or wastes her time. She'll write a very long-winded email about how much that ticked her off and how much she hates that person for doing it. Is this healthy? No. Is this iconic of her? Yeah. All of these emails in her drafts on her computer, she didn't delete them, because like, why would you do that? Why would you? Of course you would keep these emails on your computer for anyone to find. She never ever wants to hurt people's feelings, so like, she's never intending on sending them. It's just a way to get her frustrations out. But of course, one day these emails get sent out. By who? Who knows? We don't know. And number one issue is that majority of these emails that she wrote were directed at her school rival, who she absolutely hates with like a burning passion. Despises this man. These two are true academic rivals. Like, they constantly try and one-up each other. And in these emails about him, she like goes into thorough, in-depth explanations about how she would like to either kill him or commit some sort of violent act towards him. Is bad. I'm really surprised she didn't get put on like a watch list, but so she goes from being like the picture perfect exemplary student that everyone loves to the school's #1 enemy. Like, even teachers she wrote these emails about, okay? So like absolutely everyone hates her now. There's pretty much not a single person that she's not written an email about or mentioned in an email. It's bad, okay? So essentially this book, we follow her like trying to do damage control. Also, because so many of these emails were directed to her rival, and that's really bad for their school image, the principal makes the two of them work together a lot more closely over the next few months so that they appear to be friendly. So of course, like, spending more time together with her rival, like, what could happen? You know? Anyway, as I was saying, adore this book, and like just writes her romances so well. And even though like the romance is really always like feel good and fun and sweet, she does go into more heavier topics and like I think deals with them quite well and weaves them into the plot in a way that like just boosts the overall book, where you still feel like you're getting some substance out of the books while still just having a good time. And especially if you're like an intense people pleaser and crave academic validation, Sadie Wen is like absolutely the character for you. She is the definition of that. Anyway, I really loved Sadie. The romance was fun, and Liang, again, I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with all her books. By the way, sorry if the lighting goes weird. It was sunny earlier, but now it's gone on cloudy. We just avoided a cyclone here, so that was one of the other things that's been happening. The last book I read in January is Even If It Breaks Your Heart by Erin Han. I, for some reason, was in the mood for a country romance. More specifically, just like anything horse related. I honestly can't remember why, but I needed to read a book about horses or involving horses, probably because I hadn't been writing in a while. Anyway, I decided to pick this book up, and I'm really glad I did. In this book, we follow two main characters, Case and Winnie. We have Case, whose best friend died of cancer, I think a year ago when this story takes place, and his best friend Walker left a list for Case to complete after Walker passed away, and Case has really been struggling coping with Walker's death. The list, however, he is determined to complete, and after one kind of dodgy night, he sort of decides to lock in and finish this list and sort of get his life together, specifically after meeting Winnie, who also happens to be on the list. And Winnie is the eldest of 3 siblings, and she works at Case's family's ranch in order to support her family. She's got a bit of a deadbeat dad who is like more than happy to toss off all the responsibility to her. So Winnie is essentially a parent to her 2 younger siblings and really struggling in that part of her life. But horses and riding is like the one thing that keeps her going and that she's really passionate about. And of course when Case meets her and sees how she rides, he is determined to help her get onto the circuit doing barrel racing, and we sort of just go on from there. I rated this 3.75 stars. I really enjoyed this. I was on a roll in January, having such a good time with every single book I read. I was so chuffed. This book included. It was just like really nicely written. I feel like a lot of romances I read outside of like Emily Henry have just not really hit the mark for me. Specifically also young adult romances, because one issue for me is that teenagers in these young adult romances are so immature. They act like genuine preteens, and I'm like, you are nearing your 20s. Can you pull your act together, please? I beg you. Whatever situation you're in, you should not be in it at your grown age. And like the way they talk to each other and the miscommunication and stuff just really annoy me as a reader. But in this book, Case and Winnie are like genuinely mature, which is part of the book because they both had to grow up really quickly because of not so great situations, but their maturity is reflected in the book in the way that they handle like any issues that arise between them, between others, like just so good at communicating. There's very little miscommunication issues in this book, and I really appreciated that. They work together as a team. It was just really refreshing to a book where like people aren't acting stupid, which sounds ridiculous because why is that hard to find? But anyway, that was one thing I really appreciated about this book. It's also just like, because of the topics we're dealing with, it's quite heavy but heartwarming at the same time. I think it's just like a good story about grief and these 2 characters learning to like trust one another or trust other people. It's hard to explain, but it was heartwarming, and it did have really good character development in a romance book about teenagers, where I feel like most of the time there's just not that much character development. But in this, it was just like a really lovely, well-rounded book, and I really enjoyed it, and it was the perfect setting. The horses, the country setting, the like just little things about it, it was perfectly what I was looking for at that moment, and I just really enjoyed it. And I think it's like 10 out of 10 if you're looking for like a Miley Stewart summer kind of read, this is the book for you. I highly recommend. So those are all the books that I read in January. I had such a good reading month in January. I only read 3 books, but they were all good. They were almost all 4-star books, and it just got the ball rolling. I was so ready to just read as many books as possible. However, I knew that I was sort of on a fine line. I would either have a great reading month in January and then completely fall off the radar and not read that much in February, or if I was smart about it, then I could keep it going and read more. So I thought to myself, how can I do this? How could I keep the motivation there? So I decided to read some shorter books. I don't know if they're classified as short stories, but they're definitely shorter novels. The first one being A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is, I would say it's a sci-fi novel, pretty sure. Anyway, we are set in a world where robots were created and were used to, mainly in factories, I think, essentially as slaves, I'm pretty sure. And one day they all gained sentience and decided that they wanted to put down their tools and not work for the humans and move to the wilderness and just live separately completely to humans. And the humans agreed, surprisingly enough. I believe centuries. It's been a very long time since the robots left, and they essentially split the world into the robots and the rest of the wilderness that goes completely untouched, and then where the humans live, and they don't cross borders or anything. They are both completely isolated from one another. But now, since it's been such a long time, they did promise that they'd come back at some point to check on the humans, and in this book we follow the event of a human and a robot meeting for the first time in God knows how long. And that human is our main character, a tea monk, Dex, who is struggling with kind of their purpose in life or finding happiness. And the thing that the robots need answered before this robot can go back to the rest of their community is, what do humans need? Except the human that this robot runs into can't even answer that for themselves. So essentially what we're exploring in this book is just that concept of what do humans need and how that changes based on each individual human and each individual circumstance and situation, and whether that question can even be answered. I rated this 3.75 stars. It's only a little over 100 pages, I believe, so it was definitely a short read. I feel it was a little bit slow at the beginning for me, for my taste. I'm not really used to reading more, would you say conversational? What's the term? I can't think of it. Anyway, books that are exploring a specific idea and it's not so much about the plot, it's sort of the vibe, and just starting a conversation. I've not really read a lot of books like that, so to begin with, I was sort of struggling getting into just the idea of it, because I feel the part of the topic that this book was talking about that really interested me and hooked me was more so spoken about at the end, well, when we were getting clarity, which makes sense. A little bit slow for my likings. I do like a little bit more of a plot, but I loved the vibe. This is very cozy if you're looking for a cozy read. We're following a tea monk. The world building and the character exploration. The world building and the character explanation. The world building and the character exploration in such a short book was really, really well done. I really enjoyed it. The world building was really, really well explained in, again, such a short period. It's also just very comforting, especially at the end of the book. If you are kind of feeling lost in life, not really sure what to do, and feeling a little bit stuck and alone in whatever it may be that you're going through, I think this would be a really, really good book for you to realize that it's not just you, it's literally everyone on the planet. And the end of this book is kind of helping you realize that we all go through this and we all are trying to answer that question of what do we need or what do we want. So yeah, it was very comforting, very cozy. If you're wanting a slow little read that's just, again, comforting, then this is the perfect book for you. Also, if you're wanting a little bit more sci-fi vibe, perfect book for you. But yeah, that was A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. The next book I read was another short story, which is A Spindle, Splintered by Alix Harrow. And this is sort of like a retelling of Sleeping Beauty. So our main character, Zinnia Gray, when she was young, she was diagnosed with a very rare condition that was caused by, I think, some chemical incident that the government caused, of course. I think it was like the area that they were living in. But essentially, like, a bunch of kids in this one specific area got this rare condition that no one knows much about at all. The one thing is that none of them have lived past the age of 21. So in this book, we're following Zinnia on her 21st birthday, I believe. And Zinnia is obsessed with Sleeping Beauty because she really relates to the story and it's sort of comforting to her. It's also sort of like a bit of a morbid joke, I guess, that she has with herself because of her condition. So on her 21st birthday, her best friend does up this whole like Sleeping Beauty themed party, and Zinnia pricks her finger on a spindle and finds herself going through the multiverse of Sleeping Beauties. I gave this 3 stars. It is definitely like short and sweet. I enjoyed it, but I wasn't super attached to the characters. Zinnia has like very dry humor, especially about when it comes to her condition. It's like pure dry humor, nothing serious. She doesn't ever talk about it in like a serious manner, which I enjoyed her dry humor, but at the same time I felt like it occasionally undermined the weight that the story tried to have at points, because it was just turned into a joke a lot, but there were also a lot of heartfelt scenes. It was just, if you're looking for a Sleeping Beauty retelling, then this was definitely fun. I did enjoy it, and I did really like Zinnia's humor and the tone of the book, but I feel like we just weren't quite able to find an equilibrium between the 2 aspects of the book. But as I said, I did enjoy it, and I will be trying out some of Alix Harrow's other books. I am intrigued to read more, but yeah, it was very fun exploring the multiverse of Sleeping Beauty. And then I read the next book in the Mistborn series, The Well of Ascension, again, Brandon Sanderson. I said in my favourite books of 2024 video that my goal this year is to consume as many Brandon Sanderson books as I possibly can, and I genuinely will be sticking to that because I just can't get over him. Specifically Mistborn in particular, like, I loved The Final Empire. The Well of Ascension, also loved. This did take me 8 months to get through, roughly 8 months, which was purely my attention span and like the fact that I was intimidated by such a big book. All mental on my end, nothing to do with the book at all. Every single time I picked it up, I was floored and consumed by this book. I can't really tell you about the plot of this book at all because it will spoil The Final Empire. So, what can I say? Okay. In very vague terms, this book is following The Final Empire, the final events of that book, and in The Well of Ascension we are dealing with a very complicated power struggle. There's wars, there's a lot of armies, there's just a lot of stuff. It's a very tenuous and volatile situation that our characters are in. So, goes without saying there was a lot of political intrigue in this book, which I love. I don't know what it is, but I love a book with political intrigue. So I was eating up every single bit of that. There are a couple characters that we get a few chapters in their point of view, and I just wasn't a huge fan. At the beginning of the book, our characters are a little bit like split off and separated, doing their own thing, which I have to say I was a lot more hooked when they were all together. I just love these characters. I can't honestly say anything else without spoiling everything, so yeah. That was The Will of Ascension, but I gave it 5 stars. I'm predicting this will be a 5-star series for me. Completely. Crazy ending. I kid you not, the emotional roller coaster that I was on during that ending. Too many things happened. Too many things. I did not appreciate it, Brandon. I was stressed. Okay. Anyway, The Well of Ascension. Love. I have The Hero of Ages sitting on my dresser. I've saved it from the boxes of books, so I'm gonna start working my way through that soon. She's a hefty one. Let me get it for you. Look at this beast of a book. It's huge. I mean, it's not that much bigger than the other books because they've all essentially been relatively the same length. Oh, also the great thing about these Mistborn books, they all have like references and guides at the end of the book for like all the different characters. If you're like, who is that person, you can go to the back of the book and find out who they are and be like, oh, that's where they came in. And if you're a little bit confused on the magic system and you need a refresher, you can go to the back of the book and there's a refresher there for you. I just can't express, I'm obsessed with Brandon Sanderson. Anyway, 724 pages, and like the writing is quite small. I'll be working through that soon, but again, The Well of Ascension, loved, cannot wait. No, I can wait, I'm scared. Sorry, I'm gonna calm down. I feel like that was a lot of manic energy that I was just displaying, so I need to take a breather, okay? The next book I read, and the final book that I read in February, was Within the Heart of Wicked Creatures by Rima Ori. This book is a fantasy, and we're following our main character Priya, who lives in a country where children that are born during a blood moon are cursed, and they all have like magical abilities of some description. In this world, blood children are like executed because they're considered cursed and therefore like evil. And she grew up in a very, very small town with her mother and her two younger siblings. She's really not been allowed to do anything in her life because she is a cursed child. Also in this world there is a like military academy, and I think it's once a year they go around to like all the villages in the country and select one person from those villages to join them at the academy. And usually it is just a, I think, written assessment, but this year they add in another component to it, and our main character enters the contest and wins. And we then follow her going to this military academy, and maybe things aren't as lacking in magic as they may seem. I feel like this is a spoiler, but it's in the blurb of the book, so I'm just telling you. Anyway, she goes to the academy and she has lessons with other blood children and sort of learns to use her magic. And there is also some discoveries about the actual academy itself. Not so pleasant. I gave this book 3 stars. I did relatively enjoy it. I mean, it's a tried and true plot, like, you know, magic child, some sort of college or academy or whatever that teaches them magic and like a battle. It's again tried and true, and I enjoy that plot. I'm a sucker for it. I'll read it. It had interesting magic, but I feel like there are parts that we didn't quite focus on enough to make it like super enjoyable. Like that plot, it's all been done before, but I feel like the strength in that plot is the whole like academy thing and like the magic lessons and I don't know, like the friendship between the students and all that. And I think we just spent a little bit too much time at the beginning of the book back in Priya's like village instead of getting through like that whole contest thing and going to the academy, because the book felt very slow at the beginning. I was like, okay, when are we going to the academy? And then once we got to the academy, everything escalated quite quickly in terms of the major third act. So I think it was a little bit uneven in terms of the first act, second act, third act, and like that whole progression there. I just think it would have been better if we focused more on like the academy and training of it all. At least in my opinion, that's what I enjoy about those sorts of books. I feel like generally that's also what most readers enjoy the most. So that was one thing for me that I did kind of get bored with at the beginning of the book. Also, I did feel like this book was lacking in depth. There was a lot of telling and not showing, especially when it came to Priya's feelings. We could have gathered that from the way she was acting, and it just got a little bit repetitive for me. However, this book was originally written in Dutch, and I read the English translation, so potentially some of the depth got lost in the translation. I'm not really sure, but that could be a factor. The other thing with Priya is that I didn't love her as a main character. I don't know. I wasn't really sure if I liked her as a person. Especially with the whole like telling and not showing thing. It just sort of made me a bit disconnected and not invested in it. But I did enjoy it. There were parts of the book that I did enjoy, but it was just a little underdeveloped for me. It also does talk a lot about colonialism, which I feel is good, because I think a lot of fantasy books kind of have colonialism involved and it's just not really spoken about at all. So I did enjoy that that was brought up as a topic in this book. But again, coming back to the sort of lacking in depth, it was sort of not necessarily like an in-depth conversation about colonialism, which I get because you're kind of trying to balance the fantasy and those topics. Yeah, that was the last book that I read in February. Again, I did like it, but just didn't quite get me like the rest of the books that I've read so far this year. Oh my god. I feel like I've been talking for ages. Anyway, those were the books that I've read in January and February. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry for the strange energy I feel like I'm bringing. I feel like I'm very jittery or something. I don't know. I hope you were able to make some sense of it. Let me know what you've been reading the past couple months. I will have my art Instagram, my Goodreads, my Storygraph, and my Ko-fi linked below if you would like to support me. It would be very much appreciated. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!